Colin Padget is here to discuss founders. And with that, the floor is yours, Colin.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate you coming today. So I'm glad actually to be here. This is the first time at the Gold Forum, and happy to be able to give everybody a bit of an overview as to what's going on with Antino and what Founders has been up to for the last kind of 12 to 18 months. So kind of diving right into it. We're in Central Guyana Shield, northern portion of South America. The big names down there recently, Reunion sold Oko West to G Mining. We've got G2 down there as well in that area. We're a little bit further east than those guys, but in the same rocks, right in Suriname. Suriname itself, country about 650,000 people. Pretty small place, 400 by 400 kilometers, and really a gold-focused economy. Suriname has about 80% of their exports a couple years ago were gold and gold-related products. So very much an interest in keeping the gold space alive. And that comes really out of two operating mines in the area. So Newmont has the Marion mine, whereas Zijin's recently picked up the Rosebell mine. So we're looking at almost 2 decades of gold production at an industrial or major scale. There's also a large, small-scale mining or alluvial mining component to that as well, and it really speaks to the potential for the area. Our property, we're down in the southeastern portion. We've got 200 square kilometer land package, over 20,000 hectares. Those are exploitation concessions. So it gives us all the permits or rights that we need to do any sort of exploration work, but also to do some mining if we were to go that route. A lot of great infrastructure pieces that come along with the project, even with the location that we're in. I'll get into details of that on the following slide, but the next big thing, and I think a big part of our success early on, has been purchasing our own drills. We're now turning 3 drills full-time that we own, diamond drill rigs with a cost that's consistently under $200 Canadian per meter, all in, including assays and everything. So pretty proud of that. And as we move forward, we're looking at adding a 4th rig here in the next kind of 3 to 6 months. So we kind of continue to build that side of the business and increase our productivity and our ability to put meters in the ground. After that, we've recently had some success, on the financing side as well. We've got money in the bank left over from our most recent raise in May, and we're well funded for finishing out the 45,000 meters that we have planned for 2024. Quick corporate snapshot: 74 million shares outstanding. Got a little under $7 million in the bank. On top of that, we're sitting on 6.1 million warrants, all very, very deep in the money, and all of which expire here in March. So another about $4 million set to come in there. And that's what keeps us financed for the year and sees us going forward from there. As far as the breakdown, high net worth retail and institutional investors, that's about a 50-50 split there between those two, and management still sits around 15%. We've also had quite a bit of interest on the analyst side. I've had quite a few site visits here recently, but the guys listed here are the ones that already have coverage out, but I expect to see some more here later this fall. Really, the progression has been, we started last March with a concurrent financing to acquire the property. That was a 20-cent financing. Rob Cohen with Dynamic came in for 40 cents as a strategic partner, or strategic investor, I guess, at that time. And we followed that up with about a $6 million deal at 80 cents last November, and then the $1.60 here most recently in May, which is kind of a nice little progression there with the double every time. Looking at the Guyana Shield piece, this is a common slide, I think, on a lot of the presentations for companies down here. The big takeaway, so I won't belabor the point, is that Atlantic Ocean is a little narrower than it should be because the geology really of the Bermuda Shield in West Africa is the same or similar to the geology that we see in the Guyana Shield. And we all know about the endowment of gold deposits or gold in the Bermuda. And there's been a lot of exploration, a lot of work done there, and there just hasn't been the same level of work in the Guyana Shield. And so I really do believe, and I think a lot of other people do too, that we're going to see a lot of growth in this jurisdiction in the next few years. And I think there'll be a number of tier 1 world-class assets come out of the area in the next 5 to 10 for sure. In terms of infrastructure, so We've got our biggest piece really right now is having river access. So it's pretty common progression that you go from things that are closest to the ocean, and as development happens in a country, you move inwards where there's a river that can get you there. We've got barge access to site, a very well-established network that we can bring everything from 40-ton haul trucks to 320, 330 excavators, D6, D8 dozers, kind of you name it, and it can come up the river. So we're not limited really there, and I think that helps with future developments, from a future development standpoint as well. Beyond that, we are very fortunate to inherit, as part of this project, a camp that at the time was rustic, we'll call it, but the bones were there, and we were able to spruce it up, and we now have capacity for about 100 people, 60, 65 people on site at any given time, and along with that camp came a 1.3 kilometer long airstrip that's commercially serviced, commercially maintained, and those things really were what got us moving quickly at the start. Having the commercial piece is really important to us. Basically, depends a little bit on how much you weigh, but $100 to $150, you can buy a commercial plane ticket in the capital, and 45 to 50 minutes later, they'll drop you off at our main camp, which is a pretty incredible thing. After that, there's been mining here in this area. You can see in the map here that there's a pretty sizable alluvial footprint. All that disturbance is a product of that alluvial work over the last 100, 150 years. That's led to a pretty impressive road network throughout the entire property, so we can get pretty much wherever we want to go pretty easily, and that's another thing that kind of helps us move quickly on the ground and get the work done that we have. So zooming in, I'm going to just kind of start big picture here with the property. So the outline here is the 200 square kilometers concession, and then go into kind of each area in detail and kind of cover over what we've been doing and what's coming up in the future. So the big areas, Upper Antino is where all of our drill results to date have come from. Historic work was focused on Upper Antino and Boise in the center. And then we're more recently, actually just a few days ago, started drilling at Lower Antino. So right now, 3 rigs, we've got 1 in each of those kind of 3 main camps. The thing I like to point out on this slide, though, from a prospectivity standpoint, is really just the scale of this auger anomaly. So these are historic augers. There's 35,000 of them. Only cover about half of the actual land area or of the property, but the scale of the anomalies is what's really impressive. These are, the number of gram plus auger samples. Many of these down 15 meters is really quite impressive. Boise is the second place we've gone to drill. That's following up on some historic drilling, but also just following up on this trend. This what is now certainly more than 10 kilometers. Some recent LiDAR data shows that with some alluvial working and evidence of working from the past work, that it continues likely across the property for more than 15 kilometers. Lastly, in terms of where we're drilling and work we're doing, Lower Antino has an auger anomaly with a scale that surpasses even that of Upper Antino, and we're really excited to be started drilling there on top of the success we've had at Upper Antino, and the results are the things we're starting to see come out of Boise. So just to really kind of drive it home, I'm going to zoom in just here on Upper Antino here with the next couple of slides to show you what that's looked like. This map here, well, first, most recent press release put out mid last week. We're looking at now over 1.4 kilometers of drill defined structure or mineralization at Upper Antino, and that's here in a froyo to what we call Cupcake. All of this area here has been pretty well defined by us, I'd say, at this point, and gives us a lot of opportunity for growth. Much of that has come out of some fairly recent work, and we're excited that basically every hole in the last few months has been a hole that's expanded the size and the footprint of this deposit. So, and the results have kind of spoken for themselves. Some of our recent stuff has been 45 meters of 5 grams, 16 over 14. We've had a lot of really fantastic success, and we're sitting right now just with the Upper Antino stuff at over 18 100 plus gram meter products. We just got this verify thing going, and I really like it because it's a fantastic way to just show people kind of what that looks like and what our thinking is on the ground and how things have evolved. So this view right here is basically Upper Antino. So we've got our camp, airstrip, and then what we have here, and it's very similar actually to what they have at Marion, the Newmont's mine, which is about 160 kilometers north of us. But in the same package of rocks is this big antiform. You know, we kind of defined this structure fairly early on, but earliest on we were focused on this area here. For scale, you know, from the runway to kind of the end of that line works out to about 1 kilometer, 1.2 kilometers. We've since done some drilling down here to further extend it across the runway, but then things got really exciting for us when we started actually stepping out to the east and trying to basically to hit this main structure deeper down. When we did that, we started to come across these subparallel or parallel shears. And what we now see, having stepped quite a ways across this area, is that they continue across. One of the historic pits here, this was known as Cupcake. Our last press release was Froyo Eats Cupcake. And we've really taken that over and made it all part of the same structure. And there are some sizable intervals in these parallel zones. That 45 meters of 5 actually comes from this area right here. We're now, with the most recent release over here, you know, almost 450 meters across strike in an area that originally we were just following a single structure, kind of northwest, southeast. So it really takes it from what would have been a subvertical or 75, 80 degree dip, you know, single high grade structure with would be a very high strip ratio from an open pit standpoint to, you know, a much more favorable open pit scenario for mining, and something that as we put this together really starts to line up quite well with, you know, if you have a look at the Marion cross sections, there's a lot of similarities there in terms of rocks, structure, just the scale of their pits, and kind of seems to be a bit of what we're progressing towards. So it's really something to check out. So right now we're, you know, well defined over this. We extended another 500 meters north to give us that 1.4 kilometers just in the last release. There's quite a lot of opportunity, I think, here in the hinge of this fold. There's not been any work done up there whatsoever. And then there's the obvious opportunity here to the southeast immediately. And then more recently, about 1.5 kilometers along strike to the southeast this way, we've had some high-grade grab samples, you know, up to 57 grams per ton that you know, are part of that 10-kilometer plus strike length towards Boise or towards the southeast. So a lot of opportunity for this to continue to grow. Now Boise, and maybe just very quickly back up to give you remind you kind of where that is. Boise is down here in the center part of the property. So I'm going to zoom into that, and then we'll finish with Lower Antino and a bit on the structure of the agreement we have for the property. So with Boise, you know, there's been some historic drilling, diamond drilling, historically focused mostly on these high-grade shear zones. We've taken a bit of a different approach to Boise, where we're looking at both the high-grade shears, of which, you know, we've sampled, you know, up to basically effectively 12 meters of 12, up to 113 grams per ton. You know, 9 meters of 8 grams. Those are our samples, and there's some pretty impressive historic ones as well. But we're taking not just the high-grade shear approach, but we're also looking at this as a bulk tonnage target. What we found, or what's been exposed for us, that wasn't there historically when the last people were there doing some work, is really, you know, pretty impressive or sizable intrusive tonalite bodies that have a lot of really high-density veining and are mineralized. Wherever the shears come through, mineralization comes with them, and the intrusive rocks here make a great host for, you know, providing that kind of disseminated or almost stockwork type mineralization, but very much shear related. And to give you a sense of scale here, and I'll draw something on just to show you what that looks like in a sec. Sense of scale, that's a 40-ton haul truck, tailings from some of their artisanal working, and then the area here, really, when we do tours, people are always quite impressed with the Upper Antino piece and Froyo and all of that. But when you drive a long strike, you know, 35, 40 minutes on an ATV, and then you show up in camp, or in the Boise camp area, and you see this, that's really what I think what drives home the scale piece for people. And I've always found it to be very impressive myself. The model here, or kind of what we're after, is really, you know, that this is one of the shears. That's that, you know, volcanic and volcanosedimentary rocks, and that's the up to 113 grams per ton. Over here, kind of sitting along that shear in contact with the intrusive rocks. And that's this thing that's exposed, and we're fortunate to have that there. Our geos call it the best outcrop in Suriname, which they might be right, because it's usually a lot of saprolite and a lot of mud. So it's nice to actually be able to put your hand on a real rock and measure it. But the really great thing about this intrusive stuff is that you do have those shears coming through as high strain zones, and where those shears come through, even in this, we're sampling up to 70 plus grams per ton. So those are the high grade numbers. The drilling that we've done, we've been testing both in the intrusive, but also coming through those shears, and we're excited about what we're seeing with the drill bits. So looking forward to getting results out for that over the likely sometime next week is what we're expecting, but certainly by the end of the month. So that's really the model for Boise, and there's quite a bit of scale there. Lower Antino is the last one I'll touch on. This is our most recent, drilling target or drill ready target. We just got going a few days actually ago here, and I like this because we've been very successful. We've been able to do a lot of consistent surface exploration that follows up on just what is an absolutely phenomenal historical auger anomaly. So we've been able to collect quite a number of these, 15 to 18 meter wide shear zones, in different areas across this entire area. The one in the photo here, 18 meters of 1.5 grams. It's just nice to see that scale. And it's similar to some of the things historically that were found over at Froyo before the drilling tapped into some of the highest grade rocks on the property to date. Here too, we see some similarities with the actual structures themselves. So these northwest verging folds, oriented folds, the same kind of northwest overall structures. And then it actually sits this Antino, this creek here, this shear zone is actually the same that crosscuts or comes right through Froyo and Upper Antino. So a lot of similarities, very high grade auger anomaly that's, multiple kilometers in scale. And then on top of it, we do get some of these northwest structures that it's been mostly our auger work and sampling work that's put together, over 2.5 kilometer strike length in this, where, even further to the south than that, there's some artisanal work that points us in the right direction, I think, for stuff there, as well as, some historical, underground, which is in saprolite, a little scary, but some historical underground work there too that points us potentially some pretty high grade stuff. Lastly, just a quick touch on kind of where we're at in terms of the progress on the option agreement. So the optionors are Cernmes family that we work with as partners on the ground. They've helped a lot with the logistics side. We're now through stage 1, have 51% of the property, and stage 2 is coming up pretty quickly. At this point, that spend commitment for stage 2 we expect to have covered probably April or so next year. And then after that, it's kind of onward through stage 3. And I think there is actually potential to negotiate or to work towards a 100% deal here, likely in the not too distant future. Great. I'll stop it there.